So, I know why you're here. You're here because you hate these things. Maybe they hurt you at some point in your life. Maybe one of these decided to vapor lock on you like 4 times on your way to the racetrack towing your Nova, and, you know, caught on fire once because you're trying to put gas down the carburetor and it doesn't want to, you know, start, all these things, and you know, on your way home from the racetrack after the car runs like crap, and you know, you realize you have a flat cam in your car and you're already having a bad day, but these kids roll up, you know, on their bicycles, and while you're getting gas in your truck and talk about how cool the Nova is, how they want to trade, you know, their bicycles for your truck and car and all these things, and you go to start the truck again, doesn't want to start. So you have to pop the hood, pull the air cleaner off, pour gas down the carburetor again. You're trying to, you know, rack the throttle like $3 grand just to try to get it to get fuel through the system so it actually wants to run. Finally get home and you throw that carburetor away, or you forge it down into aluminum cans or what have you. Anyway, that carburetor is no longer going to hurt you in your life, and you bought one of these because everyone said fuel injection is the way to go, dude. You're going to get better mileage, you're going to get better power, better performance overall, all these things, and you put this thing on, you run all the wires the way they should, you do all those things, that doesn't work the way you should. The way it should anyway. And you think it should run better, you think it should do this, you think it should do that, but you're just not sure how to do any of that. Well, I'm here to help you. So I'm by no means a genius on any of this, but I'm gonna try to give you the basic car guy knowledge on how I tune these after having about 5 years worth of knowledge on owning this one specifically. There's one on that car that I've had for about a year, and my truck has one that I've had on it for about 6 months. That might have been a true story. Whether or not it actually was or not, I'm not going to tell you. Anyway, let's get into it. So we're going to talk about basics on this guy and go from there. So before we get too far down into the weeds, I just kind of want to get you familiar with how these work and get you a little bit more comfortable with it before you start looking at it, because these are not, you know, from outer space. They didn't come off a spaceship. Professionals can tune these, but you can also get very, 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 very close to 100% optimum with these, if not 100% by yourself. You just have to kind of know a few things about how they work. They're basically very similar to a carburetor, so if you know how to tune a carburetor, you know how to tune these. The only difference is you're doing it electronically, so instead of a screwdriver, you're, you know, pressing buttons on a controller. There are 2 screws that you adjust on these, however, one of them being this adjustment screw right here. This is for the TPS. So this screw right here on the front of the throttle blades, and some of them are a little different before they are. I'll show you that on my Gopro Classic system. This one, that is a TPS controller, so that will actually push this in. Obviously not that far, but you'll be able to see how much you're pushing that in with the TPS like sensor that's on there. So that one is very important to know, but probably the most important screw that you need to know on these things is this one right here. So this screw right here is your IAC adjustment screw. And that one adjusts idle air control. So idle air control is a very important thing, at least with the FiTech systems. I don't know if the other ones call it that. I think they do. But that number is very accurate, or very important on how these idle. If you have idle issues, that's probably your issue right there, honestly. If you haven't messed with these a whole lot and you're having idle issues, I would look at there first. Just real quickly, you want that between 3 to 10, those numbers in the IAC, and you want it to be the IAC, so if you go, we'll walk you through it in a little bit, but that's what you want that range to be on that. So they're very easy to mess with. All these wires are actually super simple to wire in. I will warn you though, there is a wire on this system, this little, it's like tan now, but this white wire right here, you want to make sure you wire that one correctly. Because that is a big issue that a lot of people have. And if you have issues where it says stall and it doesn't want to start, but it like pops, and it's having issues starting, that might be your issue. because you're not getting constant 12 volts. I'm not going to get into that because that's more install, not tuning. And we'll get into a hour and a half long video if we talk about installing as well. So that's kind of all I got on there as far as that goes. There is vacuum ports on the back side, so if you need vacuum for something, there's vacuum back here. This is your return line on this side. It says return in a big square normally on it. And then this side is your inlet, so the fuel goes through here. The injectors are under these covers on each side, and they go into each individual Venturi throttle barrel, whatever you want to call those, fuel shooters. So that's kind of what all there is to look at on these as far as that goes. So let's go over to the Nova and we'll pop the hood and you get to look at the Go AFI Classic system and what that one looks like, and we'll start the car and we'll kind of go over the tuning. Also, just a little bit of a tech tip for you. When you're working on your car and you hear a miss and you're trying to figure out why it has a miss, you kind of look through the tuning on the fuel injection and then you start pulling plug wires and looking at spark plugs and trying to figure out why and trying to see, oh, the spark plugs look good, and you don't quite know why, and check the spark plug wires because you might have a burnt one. Yeah. Anyway, so this one, as you can tell, is a lot different than the other system that I have over there. This is their 650 horsepower Go EFI Classic system, which is made to look like a Holly. And I think they did a fairly good job with it, the way this looks and everything. Now, the downside to these, I guess it's not really a downside, but it's definitely, something different that you have to deal with. These are externally regulated and the computer is externally mounted. So you have to, they're both over here somewhere. I'll show that to you in a second. So you have to kind of find places to mount those externally, which makes the top of your engine bay look a lot cleaner, which I actually prefer having over those, but it's also, it goes hand in hand with how you have to route things and stuff that if they're externally mounted. Anyway, very similar to the other one, they're just in different places. So this is the IAC screw right here, and then that's the TPS screw right there. Fuel line is routed this way right here, and there's the fuel line coming out the back. There's only one as opposed to the two with the return line on the other one. I'll show you real quick what it looks like with the air cleaner and stuff on it, and we'll walk around over here real quick. Okay, so here's the engine when you're just looking at it from up top. Obviously a FiTech system. You can see all the wires and stuff like that mostly come routed through here. You can see my ECUs mounted to the inside of the shock tower right there, and then the fuel pressure regulator is mounted right there to the cylinder head. Fuel line runs up that way, and then it runs back to the fuel tank in the back. And we can talk about fuel, my fuel system real quick too, just so you can kind of get an idea of what I run, what I have ran. But I mean, you look at it kind of quickly, and it honestly doesn't look a whole lot different than a carburetor. Like there's plugs and stuff on the side and all that, but when you have an air cleaner on it especially, it really doesn't look very different than a carburetor. Let me put the air cleaner on. And there it is. So I mean, I think it looks pretty good as far as a fuel injection system goes, because I know a lot of people have the animosity towards them because they look bad or they're ugly or they're not clean or all those things. But I mean, if you just spend a little bit of time running wires and stuff like that, I think they look pretty good. So let's get into the inside of the car, and I'll show you what my kind of parameters and stuff like that I have set up on this car look like. Alright, so there are no keys in this car. That's unfortunate. Restart. Yeah, I went back here and damn it. Give me 1 second. Alright, reset. Okay, so we're going to set the key to just on, just so you can see settings and I can mess with the computer a little bit, then we'll start it. Okay, so the screen's kind of a little bit bright, but we'll kind of walk through the dashboard and stuff. This is their newest controller that I know of. And this is the Go EFI system, so there's not a whole lot of Pro systems on it. The other one actually has Pro tuning on it. But if you wanted to, so you can update stuff through these three. You can see fault codes are right here. You can go through fault codes, display setup. You can change the way things look. There's data logging, so if you want to put a USB card into this, and you can data log, and you can look at it with a computer, and it puts into an Excel spreadsheet is how they portray the data. I haven't done that yet, but I'm going to very soon. The UEFI initial setup, I'll just kind of walk through how I have it set up, and by no means is this right or how you should do it. This is how I've done it in the past. So right now, when you go into the settings, it has an 8-cylinder, obviously. You can change it to whatever cylinders they have. Cubic inch, which is, I have it set to 360 cubic inches. Cam mild to wild, if you're wondering what the heck that means, that is how much vacuum your engine makes. I believe, so 4 is basically your engine doesn't make any vacuum and you need, it needs to figure out all that by its own. 3 is like performance streetcar, but you still make vacuum, and it's like 110 lobe separation probably. And it's I think it's inches of mercury is how they measure that, which we can look into here in a second. I have mine set to that, obviously. The Camaro, I'm probably going to have set to 2. Before I had this crazy cam that I have in the car right now, I had this one set to 3. The dually, I think I have set to 1 or 2, and it's a stock 454 engine. Their recommendation that they have on there is, I think 1 is anywhere from like 18 to 15 inches. And then it's like 15 to like, say, 10. And then 3 is like 10 to 5. And then anything below 5, I think, is 4. You want 4. So I have mine set to 4. Rev limiter is just wherever you want the rev limiter set. Idle warm up is wherever you want idle set. Injector flow is wherever you want your, is whichever injectors you have in it. That's not really a choice that you have. It's just you tell it what injectors it has. Ignition, if you want to control the ignition that's in the car, that's how you set that up. Idle, that's how you set idle up. You'll see the idle warm up. Reset the IAC, which is actually a very important thing that you know how to do. So anything that says learn, reset, if you put 1 and you send it to the system, that'll reset the IAC learning. That'll reset whenever you want it to reset. If you just input a 1, that's how that works. Fan setup, so if you have fans that you want to run, you set in everything you want it to turn on, turn off, all that stuff. Reset learn, that's another spot that you see how it says 1, so 1 clears all those things. So if you want to reset all the learning, like you've had issues or you're changing engines or anything that you want to, basically that warrants you wanting to reset things, that's how you do that. Go EFI tuning, we'll get into here in a second when we have the car running. Just real quick, so I have AFR targets right here. That's probably a big one that we'll talk about. These right through here, you can see the KPA, and you're like, what the heck is KPA? So we'll go into, that is your map sensor. So see how the map is right there, and it says 94 value KPA. So all that is that's how we adjust at throttle. That's how we adjust your AFR. So AFR is air fuel ratio, if you didn't know. And pretty much how we adjust that is you put in values on this side right here. So if you wanted to change, say, the idle AFR target, you hit select on this side. What's it saying? So you say edit, and then you can change whatever value you want to put into it. Anywhere from minimum value of 11.5 to maximum of 13, or of 16 rather. I have mine set to 13.9 right now just because it's safe. I'm going to drive it more and try to lean it out as I go. But say you wanted to change it to, you wanted to put, I don't know. We're going to change it to a 13.95 or 8, we'll say 9.5. So you want to change it to that. So you set okay, and then you set, if it'll read it, send to ACU. So and that just set 13.95 to the ECU, so now it'll idle at 13.95 AFR. So that's pretty cool on how that tunes. So obviously, it's pretty simple how that goes. Let's see if the car will start. I don't know if the battery's charged up enough. I think yeah, okay. Maybe. Nice. Woohoo! So real quick, so already you can see the RPM is pretty much where it needs to idle at. It'll bounce around a lot like that. And that's pretty much just how it idles, especially this one with rideable cam. If you have a smaller cam, it won't spin around like that as much. But you can see the KPA moving around. I'll just walk you down my settings. So one thing I'm going to say, you see that my IAC, everything is in the 30s. IAC steps is crazy at 235. The car is dead cold, and you do not want to touch any of this while it's cold because it's not accurate. If you go into large gauges, I don't know what I have selected right now. So you can select up to 4 things in large gauges, and it'll show up like this. And this is how I normally tune. So see how the AFR is bouncing around, RPM is bouncing around, the map sensor is bouncing around. And that is how you will adjust the AFR. That's what I was doing before, was I was adjusting the AFR while I was driving. Trying to get it kind of more worked into where I wanted and fine tune it. Let's say you want to adjust the IAC, right? So, hang on, we'll back out of that real quick. And you, instead of trying to figure out small numbers and stuff like that, how I normally do it is I put this on the dash, but I set it to IAC. So I'll put RPM on, map sensor off, AFR on, I'll turn the temperature on, and I'll turn IAC on. And now you have that. So see how the IAC is crazy high right now? It's gonna start coming down. If you were to try to adjust that though, you would adjust that tighter. So if it was crazy idle like that, and that's how it was warm, you tighten the screw and that lowers the tune. So that lowers that number. If you want to raise that number, you loosen that screw. You don't want it at 0, because 0, it doesn't give it any value numbers to adjust from. So you'll want to have at least 3 into it. Ideally it's 3 to 10. If it's a little bit higher than 10, that's okay. But that's kind of how that works. So I swapped to my phone real quick just because I wasn't sure how focused the camera and stuff was on it. It's kind of hard to see this with the camera. But the other thing we're going to look at is, so it's starting a little bit warm. It's not super warm, but it's warm enough, I think, to where we can kind of get the understanding of it. So one thing I wanted to talk about was how you adjust the AFR and how you adjust. So when we talked about the map sensor and the KPA, that is, so you adjust the AFRs and stuff like that, not just for idle or like cruising to get best mileage. It's also for racing. So if you want this to be performance and you have a bog in the you have a bog somewhere, so like you try to get on the throttle, and see how that one's just immediate. If it goes then those are technical terms. If it does that, you'll want to adjust it. So how you adjust it is, we'll go into the EFI tuning, you go into the AFR targets, and like I said before, so how I adjusted the idle, we go into each one of these and you adjust which ones you think you should change by, like, say the initial one you should do like a 0.2 or a 0.3, nothing more than a 14 at least to start if you're in any kind of V8 that's bigger than like say 327. You don't want any of these be over 14 really. But you want to, basically you adjust these and then you do that test again. And you feel the way it stumbles. So I mean, how this one just racks, it's not a very good example because I've tuned it already, obviously. But the other thing I can show you on it is, so see the AFR right there? So see how it's at idle? And it goes rich. And it immediately stayed there, and then it just leaned down as soon as I lifted. If it does anything weird there, like it stumbles super, super rich, or it stumbles and it goes lean, or it does one or the other, then you know the value to try to adjust. So you can watch that, and then the other thing to watch is the map. So see how the KPA adjusted immediately? So wherever that's hitting is where you want it to adjust to. So say it was at 95 and it was a little hesitant, or it was at 22 and it was hesitant. Then you adjust that and then you go again. And you see how that changes it. It's pretty simple. It's not that big of a deal to do. You just have to be able to take time to do it. So yeah, I mean, I've had to do quite a bit of tuning to this car to get it where it needs to be. That is like 100% accurate. Now, did this car run out of the box as soon as we put it on? Oh yeah, it ran fine. I mean, honestly, if you were just going to car shows and you had a 350 that had a decent cam in it and you just wanted to go to car shows and cruise around and do that kind of stuff, I think honestly, out of the box, it was probably really close to doing that. And obviously, Dum Dum Racer and me, I wanted to try to make the car run the way it should, perform 102% of what it should run. I mean, that's always my goal, is make everything that you have run 102% of what it should. Because everyone goes, wow, your stuff runs really well. And you go, yeah, I put work into it. So that's kind of the, and it's not a boastful thing. It's just you put time and effort into what you want your things to do, and they do it. And you want your stuff to work. So, but yeah, I mean, so saying that, the last system I had on it, I don't think I really messed with AFR much at all, honestly. But I messed with the IAC quite a bit. I messed with, the TPS. I messed with that kind of stuff. Anytime you mess with the TPS or the IAC, so there's two big things you want to do. So, anytime you mess with either of those, as soon as you're done messing with it, you shut the car off completely, and then you turn the key back on, and that sets it. So like TPS, say you moved it, and it's now the TPS numbers, the digits are at 2, and you turn the key off, that shuts the computer off. Then you turn it back on, you don't start the car, then that saves that 2, and it reverts it back to 0. So now instead of having it always at a 2, it's at 0, and now you have the full throw of the throttle again. It's just setting at 2 essentially. So 2 is now 0, if that makes sense. It's not too big. IAC is the same way, so instead of it being at 3, or it's going to stay at 3 to 10, and it's just going to save wherever you put that screw. It's going to save it as that's what 3 to 10, that's where we're going to stay. It's not going to move around like crazy waves, and unless it's cold, obviously, because you saw that. But yeah, so that's kind of the basics that I have on these things. If I forgot to mention earlier, FiTech did actually give me that system as a sponsor, and they are super helpful with everything they've done, and helping me with tuning basics, spare parts, odds and ends stuff with some of the used stuff that I have, and they're honestly really nice to work with, so I appreciate everything they do. And so that's kind of the basics on how to set these up and how to tune them. Basically, you go through and you set your values on whatever your engine is, whatever that vacuum is. I have my cheater sheet right here so I can tell you exactly what the HG should be. So 1 is set from 15 HG or more, so it's 15 and up. And then 2 is for 10 to 15, 3 is for 8 to 10, and then 4 is from 8 to 6. So essentially, if your engine doesn't make any vacuum, it should be at 4. 3 is a little bit more vacuum, like say a 110 separation, lope, and kind of like a mild street engine. 2 is more, your basic street small block that has a cam, like a 270 or something like that should be around a 2. And then 1 is like your boom boom straight 6 or, basic 283. The 283 that's sitting in the corner that I had in my Nova with the 400 horsepower system on it, that's what I had on the Nova at that time. I think I had it set to 4 because that's literally a stock 283 that makes like 195 crank horsepower, which means it's like 130 brake horsepower. 1588s. This engine's at 4, like I said, and then I'll probably have the 350 for my wife's Camaro at like a 2 or a 3, depending on what it runs at. And you can see the HG, what it's measuring, you can see that on the computer as well. If you look through the handset, you can see where it's reading and you can make that adjustment off of that. So immediately out of the box, you don't have to have it correct, because if you don't know, then you don't know, and then you can adjust it from there. Just make sure you save everything every time. Every step that you take, make sure you save it. As far as the fuel systems that I've ran personally, so this one currently in the Nova, the Nova's been the biggest test bed that I've had this entire time. The second system that I've put on is my dually, and then my wife's Camaro is giving me the third system that we've ran, and they're all slightly different setups. So the first setup that I ran in my Nova had an Edelbrock sump pump and a stock high volume fuel pump. And then it had the 400 horsepower system that I got used. The Edelbrock sump pump, so what that one does is allows you to run your stock fuel tank without any modifications, a high volume, low pressure fuel pump, so say like 110 gallon per hour fuel pump. You can run a stock fuel pump with that setup if you're not going to go racing. If you're going to go racing, you need to have a high volume fuel pump, or else it's going to starve the fuel sump. But essentially what the sump does, and I can list it down below, it's not a perfect system by any means, but it works pretty well. That system, what it does is you feed fuel into it, and it pressurizes the fuel to the optimum fuel pressure that your system needs, and it goes from there. So you can adjust the fuel pressure on that system to exactly what you need it to be, and it works pretty well for a street car especially. But I was kind of finding it was starving the car at the top end of the track, even with the 110 gallon per hour fuel pump rather. And the car was running in mid 13s, high 13s, low 14s probably at that point. So we decided I was going to get an Aeromotive fuel tank, and that's when I got the Aeromotive fuel tank in the car. It has a Phantom 2, I think is what that one is, and that flows I think 60 to 70 gallons per hour. I think it's 60 to 70 psi is what I have. I think honestly it'll flow to any psi you want it to. I think it's good up to 600 or 700 horsepower. My fuel pressure regulator is set to 60 psi. I didn't have any issues setting that. My dually, my 1-ton dually that I have, has a 454 in it. That has a 600 horsepower system on it. And that system is ran by the inline FiTech fuel pump. And that pressurizes the fuel, I think, to around 60, 65 psi. But it doesn't necessarily matter as much on that one because that system's internally regulated and you don't have to worry about it as much as long as it's getting that pressure that it needs. If it's getting less than that, then you'll have issues and you'll burn things up. But if it's getting that pressure, it should be fine. Anything more than 60, it'll be okay with, and you can kind of mess with how it's going to work, and like if it's deadheading or doing anything weird, like overfeeding it, say. I haven't really had any issues as far as that kind of stuff goes. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's a whole lot more I can kind of talk about right now. I think that's kind of it, my setups and stuff like that. On the Camaro, it's giving me the 400 horsepower system, and I have a Wagner. I think it's a Wagner. I don't remember exactly. It's a fuel pump that I bought. It's an inline fuel pump that's very similar. It's going to be a very similar setup to the dually is. But yeah, so that's kind of, and I'm going to wire that one in, and we'll see how that one works. Trying to just see how different things work, and we'll kind of base things and test things and kind of really give multiple options. Although if I was going to build every car and I didn't have any money, I had all the money to spend and didn't care about, budget or anything like that, Aeromotive tanks or a fuel tank pump is how I would run everything. Like everything I would own would have one of those fuel pumps in it, and throttle body injection or something like that, just because of how easy it was to run and how quiet it is. I mean, you heard it when it first started. It did its initial surge, and then I mean after that you don't hear that tank ever. I mean, it is prime. If you have the means, I highly recommend. But yeah, so that's kind of all I got for you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to watch more, be sure to like and subscribe. If you have any questions about FiTech or anything like that, you can message me on Instagram or comment down below, and I'll try to address those in the comments or on a future video if we get that far. I'm going to try to up production quality and all these things, and we're going to try to add a few things into these, so it should be pretty fun. But with that being said, I will see you guys later. Keep on keeping on. And don't let these hurt you anymore. Public service announcement. These things suck.